some cleaned up version of second edition and third 3.5 maybe, so that you could play older stuff and understand and like and make D&D yours, because they keep talking about that. Like, I don't know, if you don't want this at your table, don't have it.
Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I'm going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but fortunately I'm not going to do that alone. I have a Dungeon Master roundtable with me. I have a lot of people here who know a lot about Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought what we would do is just sort of discuss the 2024 books that are coming out. They're going to re-release the core rule books, the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide, the Monster Manual in 2024 as part of the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. And one of the interesting things that I thought was sort of curious is that we have seen a lot of surveys on the different rule books, and we've not really seen any indication of any kind of a public playtest. I am aware that there is a private playtest taking place, and I have had snippets and rumours about what's going on there, but nothing definitive. And I was kind of hoping that our panel members here today will be able to sort of give their perspective of what they sort of think is going on, how they feel about the fact that maybe we're only going to be seeing surveys at this point. Given a pandemic and the kind of problems around the world, they need to get their book to print, and they need to allow quite a lot of time for shipping because everything taking a lot longer to do. So I'm assuming that their cutoff period is probably going to be sometime near the end of this year to allow for at least a year for printing and shipping to get it to everybody before Christmas of 2024. So, but before we do that, if everybody could introduce themselves. What about Jordan without the PH?
Yeah, I'm Jordan from Flutes Loot. I run flutesloot.com with my wife, and then we picked up YouTube as well. Hence, we're on this panel, or I'm on this panel at least. She's out in the garden. She's enjoying the sun. And so we do all kinds of D&D topics, and here I am.
Hey everyone, I am Taron, Indestructoboy and Fred. I'm the designer of the Merchant, the Runekeeper, and the Dancer over on the DMs Guild, and took part in a couple of collaborations over there. My YouTube channel, Indestructoboy, is more focused on TTRPG game design, but apparently now some of my most successful videos are on music and like Elden Ring, so I guess I'm branching out there, but yeah, excited to be here.
Hey, yeah, I'm Alex, or the Bear Bard from Bear Bard Tales. Also now, Dice Goblins, playing with them. So Bear Bard Tales, I read and narrate TTRPGs, stories, mainly horror stories, but all different kinds of stories from all over the TTRPG sphere. A lot of fun. Get a comment on that and make fun of grown men who pretend to be 12-year-old cat girls. So it's a lot of fun. And then again, like I said, playing with Dice Goblins. So some of the, playing with like Den of the Drake and Critical Kundik and some really good people over there. So
Hello everybody. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle. I run a YouTube channel based on D&D lore. It started as Forgotten Realms, and then I just kind of branched out, and now I really just make videos on whatever I'm reading and finding interesting lately, which has been Eberron and Spelljammer. Lots of fun lore and stuff there. I also have another YouTube channel called Jordan's Jocular Junction, where I talk about older or the OSR scene, basically, because there was a lot of other RPGs that I was interested in that I wanted to talk about, and so that's what that is.
So given the information I've given you and what you know about what's supposed to be happening in 2024, if there's any other questions you have, by all means ask them. I'll do my best to answer them. But what is your sort of opinion of what's going on with Wizards of the Coast and this new set of books coming out?
My opinion is, you kind of talked about play testing. A few of us were part of D&D Next, which was the precursor to 5th edition. I wasn't part of like a playtest group, but I had the material. I didn't really know even how to give feedback at that point. It was just something to get into D&D. But I think right now they are pretty much making 5th edition the playtest for what they're doing next, because they're not going to do a full new system. they are going to appease us by updating some of the old subclasses and features. I mean, everyone's talking about right now, Jeremy Crawford talking about backgrounds with feats tied into them that they've kind of been dabbling in ever since Strixhaven's UA came out, and people didn't like it, so they delayed it, but now they're trying it again with this, like, what was it? The recent UA where they tried the backgrounds with feats built into them. And Jeremy Crawford said that's because backgrounds are almost forgotten, even by people who have been playing the game for years. They make a character and they forget to get a background. And so many people also will go with variant human or custom lineage because they like to get a feat at level 1. Wizards now knows that people often are done playing by level 10, and you don't really have enough ASIs to get the feats, the stat boosts you want. So they're thinking, okay, well, let's make what's already in the game better for our audience. And that is one example of what they're doing. The other was the surveys that they do where they're asking people, are you satisfied with the Berserker Barbarian? Are you satisfied with the Beastmaster Ranger? All those sorts of things. And they've done a few little updates along the way, like with the Ranger and Tasha's and some new class features. There was a UA that precursored that, where they were revamping how all the classes worked. I don't know how much of that they'll keep. It might depend on these surveys they put out, but I'm going to treat that as the play test, as their responses to the UA, Unearthed Arcana, and the surveys that go with those, and then the general surveys they've been putting out about satisfaction with 5th edition. And they'll be doing more with like hit dice and those sorts of things. The less used mechanics where it's already built into the game, they don't have to reinvent something. They can just make it more a part of the game. So I think that's how they're play testing for it and building hype into a slow rollout of it. That's how I see it going. Hopefully that answers the question, but maybe someone's got a different take.
Well, we've got somebody here who's right into mechanical design. So Taron, what would be your view on what's going on with Wizards of the Coast, given that there have been a lot of changes already in the rule system, right? And Jordan's just spelled out a few of them. What do you think's going on with Wizards of the Coast in terms of this rollout for 2024?
Well, we've noticed that there's been a shift in the design philosophy and sensibilities since 2019. A lot of the original guys that were working on Wizards of the Coast are no longer there, or they're no longer working on that team. So therein, I think that they've got some experience from seeing the system that was put out and kind of figuring out like what it now means to make a strong fighter, right? What makes a strong wizard subclass, et cetera, et cetera. So some of it might be that, like, I know that they get accused of power creep here lately. I think some of that might just be that they dealt with the system long enough now to where we're designing things that feel like we're not getting ribbon features at 10th level all of a sudden, right? Like rogues still feel like they're getting relevant features now at 9th and 13th. It's 9th and 13th, right? Yeah, 9th and 13th. Whereas before it was like, you know, I mean, Thief and Assassin getting some features that just felt kind of meh. I know that the popular argument might be it's new, so that means it has to be power creep, that the new thing is better. But there's a part of me that thinks that, like, maybe that's just, we've had the system long enough to where we know kind of what will or won't really churn or make a pleasing character archetype, right? That being said, this whole thing that we saw in the UA with like some feats getting you proficiency with martial armor and or some backgrounds now giving you a feat that gives you proficiency with like medium armor, martial weapons. It's like I don't really have a problem with that in essence, right? I don't have an issue with backgrounds now getting feats. I think they should really dispel the illusion that feats are an optional rule if that's the way that they're going to go forward with this idea. Because I know I've called out certain feats in videos before and people are like, well, it's optional. It's optional. And I'm like, Adventures League doesn't say so. So, you know, you also say multi-classing is optional, but I DM'd for Adventures League for 2 years. And we didn't get the luxury of saying, You guys can't do multi-classing. You guys can't take feats. That was part of the package deal of being an ALDM, right? So as much as like I saw that video with Jeremy Crawford wants to say these are optional rules, that's you're pushing forth official play with a rule set that DMs don't have that luxury with, so apparently you think that these things are okay. What are they going to do coming up here in the future? I mean, I've given some predictions in the past. There's definitely I know that we're going to see Monk significantly reworked. I think that Monk it will start out with a D6 hit die. I will put $100 on that right now. Sorry, I said hit die. Wow. I meant unarmed strike die. Yeah, martial art die. There we go. Okay, I was like, wait, I said something wrong there.
I'll take that bet.
Yeah.
No, not the hit die.
No way, my bad. D8 hit die, D6 unarmed strike die. There we go. Jeez. All right. Making sure yeah. Mostly because we're seeing the new races come out with that. And if they feel okay giving that to you at the theoretical 0 level, then there's no reason why Monk should get starved of that. That's not a feature at that point. That's I don't even know what I would call that, really. But I think that we're seeing a shift away from the new options that are coming out. I think are benefiting from experience with the system and feedback that says what does or does not make a pleasing character archetype. Frenzy Barbarian. I mean, Berserker has got the issue of it does not feel good in this system to incur a detriment for using something that was your core class fantasy, right? I want to play this thing because I want to get mad and hit shit. That is its deal, right? So whenever you're like, okay, we're going to give you this thing, but if you use it too much, you get exhaustion. It just, I think we're going to see a move away from detriments as a part of class features. By you doing this thing, nothing bad will happen because you did the thing. That's at least what I feel like I'm seeing these days. But I mean, I'm hopeful. I will say that I'm hopeful. I know that they just brought on Justice Armand, who I've seen his work on the DMs Guild, and I'm like, okay, you've got something there. You've really got someone on board that I have faith in for the system. But yeah, we'll see what's up. I'm optimistic. I'll put it that way. I'm trying to be optimistic.
So, Taron, I'm going to ask you a very specific question, and that is,
okay,
given all of that, because I know you're aware of a lot of the changes, do you think that whatever we get in terms of the core rulebooks in 2024 can be achieved with just surveys, or do you think that it really needed to have a open play test? Because, I mean, let's get real, the amount of changes that have taken place in this game are fairly significant. In fact, if anything, I feel like there are more changes in the game than ever occurred going from 3rd Ed edition to 3.5. But you wouldn't know that unless you had played those systems. So is surveys or a playtest the way to go?
The reason I feel shaky about it is because my community has a lot of really up their names in the homebrew scene. I know Jordan's seen my Discord where I've got all the pro designers that are up there. Some of these people have been contacted by professional publishers to consult them on their system. Some of them have designed their own system. What worries me is that with me having one of the most active Discord servers as far as professional designers in the scene, maybe next to the Discord of many things, what worries me is the first time I heard about this being a thing was literally 10 minutes ago whenever you asked us about talking about this. So I haven't heard of this playtest. Benjamin Huffman just told me he had never heard about this playtest. Ross Leiser has not. The guy who wrote Benjamin Huffman, The Pugilist, Ross Leiser, The Accursed. We were talking about guys that have some of the best-selling classes on the DMs Guild. Nobody in my Discord's talking about this, and I'm worried that the people that I trust writing for this system aren't the people that have at least heard about I had an opportunity to go get, see some of the options and give them some feedback. I worry that they're targeting people with more Twitter followers than they are people that actually know the system. And that worries me. Should they be transparent at this point about the new system? We're not owed that. It's all speculation and rumors right now, as far as I'm concerned. But I will say it does worry me that like the pros that I know that make money writing for the system don't know anything about this playtest that's going on right now. That's yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really conflicted here. First off, like, what is it even? Because like everything's been speculation. Is it a 5.5? Is it a 6? Is it more of a basically like, oh hey, here's some sort of updated books you can kind of use? Because like they say optional, but this fan base has strong FOMO. And so if you don't have the latest books, you're missing out, and then stuff like Adventures League, like they have to set a standard. So what is it? Is it something that we're going to be able to use all these books now that we've been building up over this time? Is it something that all that is thrown away and any book that comes out between now and then don't buy because, in 2020, in just, a year and a half or so, you're going to have to get rid of them? What exactly does it look like? The cynic in me thinks it's going to try to like, it's something new that you're not going to be able to use the old stuff. And it's just another way. Okay, cool. We're starting over here. Buy all our new stuff, especially you have to remember that Hasbro is, the overlord at the end of the day. On the other hand, I should say, it's kind of hopeful, if it's something more like, 3.5, where they're just kind of bringing everything together and just, hey, we've learned a lot with this. Here, we're going to kind of like wrap things up, put it together, make it all nice and neat. Here you go. I think it's weird that they announced it so early, especially, it's like that's kind of a long cycle. I know some things they like to leave, some video games and stuff, they like to leave this really long cycle ahead of time, but I like the more Bethesda method where hey, it's coming out tomorrow, drop, but I think that like what you were talking about with the lack of outward play testing is really concerning. Because it's not like a video game where like everything breaks day one, cool, they can just patch it in real quick. If they're not play testing this enough and enough people aren't seeing it, because it's something like this that's so creative bound. If you only have like one table of people or a couple, a small sample size, they're not going to catch everything. And then to fix it, it's going to take a couple of years of books being released. It's not, they can't come up with a day one patch like a video game. So the fact that it's not outwardly testing, it gets the cynic in me worrying that it's just like a quick thing to throw together and half baked, and then just trying to get money because they're going to make everything before it obsolete. I hope not. I really don't. But I think the problem right now is that Wizards of the Coast, D&D's never been this popular ever. It's never had this kind of eye on it. It's always been, even before 5e came out, it was just like, it was okay, D&D, whether any era where, you could even argue in the 80s when people were worried about it because it was, making kids demonic or whatever, still wasn't this popular. And so it's a new thing that they're not used to seeing this many eyes on it, this many people caring about it. And so, I'm hoping they're not making a bunch of weird mistakes based off something like that.
I think it's important to note that the D&D Next playtest wasn't to hammer out mechanics. It was to hammer out how people wanted to play. Because with 4E, they very much were like, oh, people want a tactical board game, and that's what they delivered. And then it was like, that's not what we want at all. So I think that entire open public playtest was just, it wasn't about mechanics. I think they're just like, we can make mechanics and we can internally test them. Like, we have that idea. And I don't know about you guys, but like, I don't know anyone who plays these these unearthed arcanas that come out. Like, we all kind of discuss them and stuff, but like, I know a lot of people that play 5e, but not any of them are like, oh, the new unearthed arcana is here, I'm gonna go play it. So that kind of makes me think that they don't care about that. Like, it's a way of generating hype. And I'm gonna reiterate, like, I think the 5e playtest was, how do you want to play? And they got a very good sense of like, I use my game for this. And it's like, okay. So with 2024 being the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, they want to do something big. That 50th anniversary also has a nostalgia factor in it. If you look at every part of our society now, nostalgia is king. Like, we're redoing comic movies and we're redoing all this stuff from our childhood, and there's not an original idea in Hollywood and things like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were not going to come out with a 6th edition per se, like, here's a new version of D&D, but really a set of core rule books, like the 3 rule books that have the 5e rules in it, but also some cleaned up version of 2nd edition and 3.5 maybe, so that you could play older stuff and understand and like and make D&D yours, because they keep talking about that. Like, I don't know, if you don't want this at your table, don't have it. There was the latest video with Jeremy Crawford where he's like, don't use my words to justify that you can't have feats and da-da-da. So I don't know. That's what I think. I think that it's going to be and more focus on the past, I guess, and more of a retro design. And that's another reason that they don't need to hammer out mechanics, because those mechanics are already 50 years worth of testing.
So I was actually part of the public beta test for D&D Next, and then I got roped into the Alpha Playtest in private, which was not open to everybody, as a result of one of my friends getting very friendly with Mike Mills. So one of the things that I found interesting is that although we would give feedback, but people gave feedback in the beta version, it did seem to make some adjustments, but not everything changed for everybody. If you disagreed with something, it didn't change everything. With the Alpha Playtest, we often found, well, I certainly found, that you would give feedback, but it didn't actually change what they did. And I mean, when you give feedback, you're just one person amongst others, right? So you're not necessarily going to be listened to. Just because one voice says this doesn't mean it's the same for everybody.
And with any playtest, I think they look at that and they're like, well, the math checks out, I think we're okay. But I wonder, like, in those playtests, would they ask you, like, does this feel fun? Does this feel monkish? Because I think with a lot of those surveys, that's the questions that get asked the most. Like, does this feel like something a monk would do? Because there's a lot of, like, subclasses or classes in 5e that are pretty boring to play. And we've been playing this game for how long now? And, like, there's a lot of people, I don't want to play another monk. Like, it's awful, kind of a thing. So, but
the point I was going to kind of like throw in right there, I am 100% behind the idea of them kind of revamping Player's Handbook, whatever options, because this is the thing I've been kind of crowing at WotC about like, the new options that you're coming out with are on a different scale of power. So what you've done is make it to where players that don't play these options are actually missing out. And that's not fun. It's like players are going to feel like, if I don't roll up a Twilight Domain Cleric, I'm not getting the most out of this class. Because, you compare Twilight Domain to War, like, why would I play a War Domain Cleric if this is also in the game? And we're not talking about a difference in flavor, because, like, if they were on the same level of power and the flavor was all there, I think that's what we're aiming for, But, like, they're just not. There isn't really there's a sort of illusion of choice here, where we think that, like, yeah, this is an option, but is it really? I mean, like, all someone's got to do to find out about the strength of some of these options is go on YouTube and check out any of our channels, right? Like, and I think what I would like to see, and I've said, WotC, the thing that you need to do is retroactively buff, whether that's, I originally said an errata, I didn't think it would be a whole new system or a whole new edition, but like the player's handbook stuff needs some love. It needs to get a little bit of a buff, you know. I mean, and yeah, Natasha stuff needs to get brought down a little bit, but like if they're gonna move forward with like a new revamped player's handbook, whatever, and the new edition is it's the old stuff but with some changes, I'm pretty okay with the idea. I guess I kind of have to be because I've been telling Watsy to do it now for 3 years. So yeah, like
I don't know. I think was it you that said that the 5e playtest is, or this playtest, this hypothetical playtest is just everybody playing 5e?
I think that
was my perspective. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Jordan, good name, good perspective. So
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense to me because I bet more than filling out these surveys, they're watching stuff like this. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a team of people that's like, what is the social world talking about? And it's like, I'm gonna go watch How to D&D, and I'm gonna go watch all this other stuff, and we're gonna get they're griping about this. Go to the comment section. I don't really care what the YouTuber said. I'm gonna read the comments to see like what are people the loudest about. So it wouldn't surprise me if just this social media trend is also the play test in a way, like the great machine that they're like, oh, we could just tap into this free information pool.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I'll
be really,
yeah.
you know, it'd be really meta. DMs all the time say, you don't need to have a plan, just listen to your players and then adjust your game. The real meta is WotC is the DM for all of us, and they're just listening to what we think 2024 is going to be. And whatever is the most popular opinion, they will do it. Maybe that's what's going on.
Well, to add to Jordan's point, yeah, Twitch designs D&D. But to add to Jordan's point,
designs D&D.
yeah. I mean, I know Dan Dillon has watched my YouTube channels because he's in my comment sections. Open publicly, Dan Dillon has commented on my videos in the past. So I know that they do watch our content, you know, and they may not be quite as active about letting us know they watch our content, but I'm very much aware, you know, I can see who's subscribed to my channel. I'm very much aware that the design team does check out those of us that are a bit more, I guess we're willing to put out these breakdowns or we're giving feedback on it, right? Like they do watch our channels. So like, take that for what you will.
So one of the things I find interesting when I was looking at the surveys, I was like, oh, the surveys are they're like more about how do you think this is good? And because they're skewed to do you think these are good, I was like, well, actually these questions are more like for a player rather than the dungeon master. They're not really about, is this too strong? Is this too weak? This is, do you just like this? So there's not going to be an awful lot of people saying, we don't like the Sentinel feat, for example. Do you know what I mean? Or, no, we're unhappy with Fireball or anything like that. Or, you know, so, I know one of pet peeves for Jordan is Counterspell. So it's not like the feedback in those surveys is structured like that. When I was doing the Alpha Playtest, our feedback was, it wasn't quantitative, it was qualitative. You would just write out your observations, and there was a survey of a nature, but most of the data being collected was qualitative, which you can't really get. They have some boxes in those surveys for doing that, but I'm guessing most people don't write very much into those boxes. What I found interesting is one of those play testers who went very quiet, they're apparently testing privately whatever D&D involved is going to be, said Dungeons & Dragons Evolution is Dungeons & Dragons 4E with a new coat of paint hiding within 5e. And I was like, really? Is it? And it's interesting because Monsters of the Multiverse came out, and I was like, oh, almost feels like I'm looking at races from 4e. All of the older races are kind of defunct now, right? Because, I mean, you could use them if you've got the books, but they're probably going to go out of print. And then I was like, okay, well, now I knew they were going to steer away from the short rest, which they have been, which was very much sort of still an aspect of 4E, and we've gone with this proficiency bonus long rest sort of thing going on. But there were aspects to it that were sort of odd, that there are so many mechanical aspects to character classes and everything else, and it's usually combat focused, I've noticed. There were some very nice things in Tasha's that went away from that. But I am suspicious that the reason that it is not being openly play tested is, one, they've already kind of locked it down. The surveys are really about marketing to make sure that the vast majority of people who are playing the game are just going to be happy with the options that are there. Not necessarily that they're... The problem is that the community doesn't necessarily know what's good for them. And do you know what I mean? We see the concept of feat stacking coming back, or feat trees, very short ones. This is a concept that goes right back to 3.5. And one of the good things about 5e was we got rid of feats being stacked. You didn't have to take one feat to get another feat. And now we're going back to something that that was taken out of the game. It's coming back into the game. And I see a lot of those sorts of things. So Jordan, I think you're right. I think they're taking a lot of things from 3.5, 3e, and probably 4e, and embedding it into 5e much more than it was before. And that's going to happen whether people want that to happen or not. And I'm sure there'll be a good portion of people who'll be quite happy with that to happen. I think it is pretty much locked down. I had hoped that wasn't going to be the case, but that's my guess as to what is going on. And given that playtester went very quiet after asked a few questions, I think that's exactly what is going on in the background.
So I'd had one thought before you just said that too. What if it's like an overlay set of rules? So what if it's 5e? But because like a lot of people say, like, oh, 5e's too combat light. So what if it's just basically a set of combat rules that you could change over 5e? I was thinking 3.5, but if you said 4, that even that makes sense too. They basically take 4e fighting, combat, and maybe some other things, and so it's like almost like a hard mode essentially. It's like you could play 5e or 5e hard. And then because what he said is optional. So all the books would work. It's just you have this second set of combat mechanics or certain mechanics that would lead to that.
Well, that's what 5e was supposed to be. It was supposed to be 3 engines, right? The super simple one, the standard one you would play. We never got the super simple one. We just got the standard one. And then the third one was supposed to be a whole lot of variant rules. So it would be sort of the advanced Dungeons and Dragons version, where every table would be different because they would tack on different rules from whatever they found in the Dungeon Master's Guide, if you can find enough variant rules in there to actually tack on. So I mean, that's what 5e was always supposed to be, but we never really got that. We got two, didn't we? We got two. We got the standard game, and then we got that you can attach some variant rules to it, and that was it. And if they go with the 3 engine model, sounds good to me. But yeah, I am just suspicious because I've noticed that the design philosophy around Wizards of the Coast is significantly different to what it was.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, you guys have all basically nailed it on the head. At least what I've seen as far as like what we're designing for, like new classes and everything. That yes, there's a general move away from short rest. I think mostly because what they meant for that to be narratively and optimally, if you're getting short rests as much as you can, it should be once every combat encounter you do this thing, right? Like, I mean, hopefully you would think, and I know that's not how every table plays it, but if you're resting optimally, a warlock should be getting their spell slots back every combat. Short resting, I'm going to go take an hour nap, whatever. Fighter should be able to action surge once per combat. The problem is the narrative has been kind of causing this thing of like, well, our adventurers are going to be like narcoleptics that are just going to go pass out in the dungeon every hour, right? After every single fight. And that it slows down the pace of the table. So like I thought, it's mechanically no different than if you would just phrase a feature that said once every minute, you can do this thing. And I mean, in theory, I think that's what they want the short rest refresh to be. But that feels like it gets kind of, and I know that this is like, it seems like taboo to say that it feels video gamey. But that is kind of gamifying what is supposed to be a narrative for how you refresh your power. And I think that might bother some people, right? That's why we got away from the wordage of like once per combat, you can do this thing. After suddenly I stopped fighting, I punched this cat, I'm in combat, I'm out of combat, I can get this thing now. Like that's what it turns into. That's why the narrative gets all weird. That might be why they're moving away from short rests. But yeah, I mean, you guys all hit all the points I was kind of thinking about anyway. So yeah.
All right, well, thank you everybody for your perspective. It's been interesting. I think we've covered everything that there needs to be discussed about a topic like this. So go and check out everybody's channel here. For those of you who don't know, I will make sure you can find them down in the description. Thank you for everybody's feedback. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.